Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, brought to you by Seat Tires. I'm your host for this week, Ashwin. I'm joined by DJ, who has had a tantalizing couple of days, been at the ground up in Trent Bridge. But before we get into a little bit more about your experience, etc., DJ, pretty disappointing, right? We're sitting here, 5-test series, hyped up series of the summer, India versus England, all that. And as always, rain played spoilsport and washed out day 5, and we ended up in a draw. So kind of overall, how are you feeling?
I think rain continues to be England's most consistent performer, right? Over the years, it feels like I spent a lot of time at cricket grounds watching it rain. I got sort of lucky. I got a day and a half of cricket, days 3 and 4. Incredible days of cricket, but it's just disappointing. And we'll talk about my thoughts around how Test cricket needs to adapt around that. They stuck to the earlier start times, which they should have just brought the start times a bit forward because it was drier in the mornings. So we'll talk about all of that. But frankly, just a very intriguing day of Test cricket that I feel we were a little bit robbed of. I think we needed a couple more hours of cricket somewhere there, and we may have had a result. Whichever way it went, it would have been a great Test match either way.
Yeah, there's definitely a part of me that says India are slow starters, right? Whatever, we have a history of not starting very well, losing the first match and then coming back, etc. So part of me is saying, hey, you know what? A draw's not bad. The guys will find some rhythm in England and find their form, etc. Another part of me says this match was there for India to grasp onto. So beautifully poised, would have been a phenomenal day 5. Unfortunately, we missed out. Folks, there's a lot happening in the world of cricket. A lot of different things we can talk about. The 100 is happening also in England, and that seems to be less affected by rain, I'd say. So maybe they're better at scheduling. Bangladesh has swept the first 3 T20s against Australia. Australia has since come back to win 1, but they already won the series 3-1. So lots happening, but being Edges and Sledges, we're going to be focused for the rest of this episode mostly on the India-England Test series. DJ, let's dial it back 5 days. Selection. Virat Kohli did not announce our playing 11 the night before. Let's quickly touch on that. What do you think happened? You and I, we've talked on this show, and Varun, you and I have all said it's a bit silly. Why do we do it? We talked about does it give the players reassurance, this and that, but no announcement early this time. What do you think changed?
I think they learned their lesson from the World Test Championship final, right? They announced 2 spinners, then it rained the first day and it was washed out and they didn't change their team. And why would you give away their advantage or the element of surprise? So it feels like Kohli and Shastri learned from their mistake, and well done to them. They probably looked at the weather forecast. And I think at the start of the Test match, there was rain scheduled on 4 days. We had it actually on 3 days. I think we should continue with this. There's no point declaring an 11 before the toss. Declare it at the toss, which is what you need to do.
Speaking of the 11 and the element of surprise, probably like we all predicted our squads early on, etc. Probably 2 key surprises if you go into it, right? One triggered by injury, which was the inclusion of Rahul, who was not probably in the reckoning 10 days ago, or let's say definitely not a couple months ago. Then Gill got injured. Then, of course, Mayank with injury, Rahul slotted in as opener. And the second was the choice to play 4 quicks instead of 3, leaving out the great Ravichandran Ashwin and bringing in an extra quick in the form of Shardul Thakur. So let's just quickly talk through those. For me, Rahul, not a surprise. I think, you could have brought in somebody else. Vihari pushed him up the order, Abhimanyu Ishwaran, etc. Rahul has opened before. Yes, it was back from 2016 through 18. He didn't have a great run. They were trying to make him a middle order batsman, but he has experience. He has the grit. And of course, he showed up strong. So no surprise in a big way for me on KL. DJ, let me ask you about the bowling. When you sit Ishant Sharma and Ravi Ashwin from your playing 11, that's 719 Test wickets combined in your squad that are not playing in the 11. Talk me through what you think the decision-making process was there.
Yeah, I think it's a tough decision. It's a tough call with Ravichandran Ashwin being left out. Particularly after his 6 for earlier in the season. And he's had experience. He's been on previous tours of England. I think he was a casualty of the combination that India chose to play. Again, scars from the World Test Championship final. They played 2 spinners. And frankly, he suffered for the fact that Jadeja is a better batsman than him and a better fielder than him and is fitter than him and is likely to get through the entire Test match, which has been an issue with Ashwin previously. So the other point is Ben Stokes isn't playing. And Ashwin against left-handers is fantastic. They only had Rory Burns and Sam Curran, I think, in this England lineup who were left-handed. There was no David Malan like last time around. There was no Alistair Cook like last time in 2018. No Ben Stokes. I think so that played a bit of a role in their decision making. Whether Jadeja was effective as a bowler, I'm sure we will talk about that, because I didn't feel so, but I was watching at the ground, so maybe there was more analysis going around that. He obviously justified his selection with the bat. I thought, but then Thakur is the other one, right? Which is just, again, it's PTSD from the World Test Championship final. And frankly, and I know you've got strong views on this, thinking he's like not our best bowler. He shouldn't be playing Test cricket. I know Varun made a joke about we're talking about the pinnacle of Test cricket and we're talking about Shardul Thakur, but frankly, Shardul lends that balance to this side that is so important. He's not good enough to play as a frontline bowler. He's not good enough to play as a frontline batsman, but maybe, and just maybe, he's good enough to bring enough with the ball and the bat to bridge that little gap that we have. Pandya is a better batsman than he's a bowler. Shardul is a better bowler than he's a batsman. So uh, I think he had a decent game with the ball, to be totally honest with you. I mean, honest trier, and frankly, has sort of a golden arm. So, um, yeah, tough selections, leaving out Ravichandran Ashwin and Abhimanyu Ishwaran. But as you said, understand the KL Rahul point. But sometimes you just wonder why these guys come out and make these statements that Rahul is a middle order batsman, and then the next test match is opening the innings. You're just like, dude, you don't
Yeah.
need to say that.
Yeah. Sometimes you shoot yourself in the foot. Let me say quickly, Shardul for me had a great game. I think he bowled well. He was effective. And people who've heard the show for 2.5 years have seen the journey and how I haven't historically been a huge fan, but I credit where it's due. He bowled well. I continue to maintain. I mean, I don't know where, like, other than one knock, was it maybe two in Australia? Where did these batting sound bites come from? His averages in first class cricket is like 16. So yes, if you compare to a Bumrah who averages 4 now or 3.5, right? But that's not, you cannot pick your number 8 with a 15, 16 run batting average for his batting. So either he belongs in this side on his bowling, which in this first test he did, or you have to dig deep into the trenches of the domestic scene to find all-rounders. You cannot be picking a player like Shardul for his bat. Like, to me, for the fact that you even put him in the same bracket as Pandya and said he's slightly better or he's a better bowler, like, it's not even close. He's not an all-rounder. He's a bowler who can bat a little bit. There's a big difference.
And I agree. And I guess the question is, who is a bowler who can bat better than Shardul Thakur?
Yeah, I don't think we have one right now, but I don't think it's fair for us to say we pick him.
Maybe
I don't think we pick him.
Bhuvi is the one, right? Like,
Deepak
Bhuvi would have
Chahar,
fit in
maybe.
beautifully. Yeah, Chahar, Bhuvi, those are the guys. But at the moment, I mean, he's kind of your best option in these circumstances, right? And
yeah. I still continue to believe you shouldn't be picking your bowlers on their ability to bat. Like, if you're relying so heavily on your number 8 with the bat, etc. Anyway, we'll come to that. How about let's table that and talk it at the end when we talk about previewing the next test match. But let's talk about this first innings. So, of course, Virat Kohli lost a toss. He needs to be practicing his coin flipping more.
He should just give up. He should just let the other team.
And just say go. Choose what you want.
Just do whatever you like.
Save us all some time and effort. But Joe Root chose to put England into bat. And the man you of all people have been fairly critical about, Jasprit Bumrah, comes charging in, picks up a magnificent first over wicket of Rory Burns, getting him LBW, and went on obviously to have a great first innings, right? Like, ultimately at the end, everybody was talking about Shami's 3 for and Thakur picking up 2, but Bumrah picked up 4 great wickets in the first innings. And to be totally honest, 183 at the end of a first day's play, I would have taken that in a heartbeat, right? To get England 183 all out.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, that's cricket, right? Like, Bumrah, who had a bad World Test Championship final, let's be honest, he didn't have a good game. He looked off color in those warm-up games. Maybe he wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe he was preserving himself for the test matches themselves. But, I mean, he looked switched on. He looked like he had a point to prove, right? And he is the leader of the attack. And if the leader of your attack isn't taking wickets, you've got problems. And we'll come to the batting lineup, and the leader of the batting lineup isn't scoring runs. So we do have problems there. But he came in, he looked switched on, got a wicket in that first over, had his tail up, and I mean, incredible performance from him. You saw what it meant to him, right? And for a guy who's got so many achievements, he's won trophies with the Mumbai Indians. He's played for India for a long time, but I think this test match meant a lot to Bumrah, and I'm glad he's back in form. He looks fit. He looks firing. He's bowling quick. He was bowling, I think, 89 miles per hour consistently, even on day four. So great to see Boom Boom back in form.
Yeah, 100%. It was honestly outstanding. And so the only real standout performance for England in that first innings was Joe Root, right? 64, of course, did great in the second innings as well, which we'll talk about. But just some really, really good tight bowling. Let's quickly talk about the tail, because typically we remember DJ in the first innings when Sam Curran was out there starting to hit some big sixes. We were that the PTSD was setting in from Sam Curran the last time around, and getting them to 155 for 7 could have meant they made 220 or 230. We managed to get them out for 183. Was there a change in strategy? I mean, Bumrah ended up getting both Broad and Anderson off that full swinging delivery, right? Which is classic tail ender dismissal. Was there just a change in approach as to how we tried to dismiss the tail? Because it's something India's been bad at recently.
Oh yeah, and you spoke about last time around Sam Curran thrashing us around. I go back all the way to 2011 where it was Trent Bridge. We had England 120 for 8. And Stuart Broad, who used to be able to bat before Varun Aaron hit him, and Graham Swan came and smashed us all over the place. We had no idea. And Sam Curran did it. Jimmy Anderson scored 84 against us batting at number 11, man. I mean, it's the scars of the England tail run very, very deep with with Indian cricket fans. But I think what they did well this time is they didn't try and bounce these guys out. They didn't try and do anything different. Like Bumrah, probably the best in the world at the Yorker, just said, I'm going to back my strengths. I'm going to bowl really straight and really quick. And you saw, like, the Jimmy Anderson dismissal was perfect. He had that LBW reversed on review. And then the next ball, he bowls like, okay, you know what? If you're going to reverse my LBW, I'm going to bowl even straighter and I'm going to knock your stumps out. So no question about it. Just brilliant. And they stuck to what they do well, just bowling at the stumps and not change their method from what had been successful to the take the 7 wickets until then.
Yeah, so the ball was getting some help. The Quicks took all 10 wickets in that first innings. Interestingly, the second time in Indian history that the Quicks have taken all 20 wickets in a match. 2018 was the first time. Yeah, and 2021. So pretty cool stat
Good
there.
stat.
Thank you, sir. I saw it. I'm sure I saw it on Twitter or something. I don't know. At 5 a.m., I put my alarm to wake up, saw the rain, and spent time scrolling Twitter, and that's probably where I saw it. But let's talk about India's reply, right? Before we get into any more specifics and the negatives of it, how solid has Rohit Sharma looked as an opener? Yes, he's not able to really convert into big scores, but if your opener can play out 100 deliveries against the swinging Duke's ball with Broad, Anderson, Robinson, Curran, and he made 36 runs, looked great before he fell trapped to that stupid short ball that we knew he's so susceptible to, but short ball, and he's the compulsive puller, if you will. But how good did Rohit and Rahul look out there? I mean, to get to 97 on the stroke of the end of a session and not have lost a wicket right as we were going into the last over. Rohit obviously succumbed, but that looked pretty good, right?
Just absolutely brilliant. I mean, let's talk about Rohit. As you said, I've been critical of Rohit about maybe 2 years ago, before he started opening,
We
basically.
shouldn't say on the show what you called him, right?
No,
What
but,
your
but,
nickname
but
was
the,
for him?
the, the point being, like back in the day, right, when he was batting 6, 5, whatever, the question was more around his temperament. The question has never been about his technique. And his technique is tightened up even more. He now knows his game. He's a few years older. He comes out to bat when it's 0 for 0. And I'm a massive fan. I think I said in December 2018, I want Rohit Sharma to open the batting. And he has been opening the batting. He's been successful, well, moderately successful overseas. Let's be honest. He's got 30s. He hasn't gone on to convert the big ones, but he hasn't looked troubled. He hasn't looked like um, he hasn't got the technique to survive in those conditions. So I'm a massive fan of Rohit Sharma opening the batting. It's a big name up top. And I mean, even the 12 not out he made yesterday on day 4 was probably one of the best 12 not outs you've seen in incredible conditions, doing the hardest job in the world right now, opening the batting against Broad and Anderson in seaming and swinging conditions at the end of day's play with the lights on and the light fading and rain. It's just brilliant. So love Rohit Sharma. Very, very solid. He needs to stay fit. He needs to stay focused and the runs will come. KL Rahul, right? And I think you talked to the cricket podcast guys about the technical analysis of it. And for a guy who wasn't even in the reckoning about 2 weeks ago, he has had an incredible test match. And we'll come to the Lord's selection dilemmas later. But I mean, he batted beautifully, batted close to his body, left a lot. I think he made 84 in the first innings with 200 plus balls, just laid that solid foundation. And I mean, he got two unplayable deliveries to get out in the test match. So I'm very impressed by the work he's done. Very, very impressed. He's done the work. And again, it tells you that the Indian cricketers do think that test cricket is the pinnacle of the game. I would have thought that he'd be in Sri Lanka playing the ODI and limited over series, right? But I wondered a little bit why he's in England. Is he going to be a passenger for the tour? Because if you had Mayank fit, if you had like Shubman Gill fit, would he have played? I don't think so. So really pleased to see him grab that opportunity. He was obviously hungry, and I mean, tough questions coming up for this Indian think tank, but good problem to have, and very pleased for Rahul for doing so well.
Right. So far, so good. 183 all out for England, 97 for the first fall of the first wicket. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about the journey going a little bit less good for Team India after that. So join us after this break. Welcome back to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, brought to you by Seat Tires. DJ, 183 all out for England, 97 for 1 for India. Cheteshwar Pujara walks out at 3, but blasts about 16 balls, edges 1 to Joss Butler. Kohli walks in. Next ball, Jimmy Anderson. We've talked so many years about Anderson versus Kohli, and Jimmy got the better of him in 14. Then was it 14? Yeah, 14. And then Kohli bounced back in style in 2018. A first ball duck, edges it also to Butler. And then Rahane, in a moment of madness, he looked a little bit nervous, restless. Maybe, obviously when Pujara went out, like 10 to 15 minutes earlier, he wasn't expecting to be out there. So went out, looks restless, got run out to an absolutely suicidal call. No blame on KL Rahul, although he's not the best runner between wickets in general. That was entirely Rahane's fault. And suddenly you go from 97 for 1 to 112 for 4, which is what, 15 for 4, 97 for 0 to 15. So 15 for 4 is what we lost. And suddenly this 183 looks like a pretty big total. So talk me through this. We talk about it being the best 3-4-5 in the world. Everybody has bad days. Bumrah, like you said, had a bad outing at the World Test Championship. Pujara and Kohli didn't get a chance really to fight back in that second innings. So was it just a bad day at the office, or like, how did we go from having one of the best 3-4-5s in the world to being 15 for 4?
It's a good question. After Rohit pulled that down, fine leg's throat, you're just like, okay, Pujara is going to come in after lunch, and we're still on top. It's 97 for 1. Okay, it's disappointing. Pujara and Kohli got really good balls. I mean, but I don't know whether Pujara makes it look better, or maybe it's his technique. I don't know. He seems to get out to these unplayable deliveries really often. There's a great article by Cricinfo on the Kohli versus Anderson battle before the series started, and the Kohli versus Anderson, the brief interlude Kohli had in the middle, where he's like, Kohli was practicing exactly that ball in the nets, but playing it in the nets and playing it against Jimmy Anderson at a Trent Bridge ground, which, man, I have to tell you, I was there for days 3 and 4. Trent Bridge, I watch a lot of cricket at Lords and the Oval, and there's a lot of Indian support there. Nottingham has got a lot of local support. So
you could tell watching on TV for like decisions that were England's way versus India's way, the crowd noise and stuff. It was very heavily England, it felt like.
Yeah. And so I wasn't there for the day that Jimmy got Kohli on the first ball, but they do back their boys. And that you could see what it meant to Anderson. He bowled, and I don't think Kohli did anything wrong.
Yeah.
Ball swung in and seamed away. I mean, if you have to get the best batsman out in the world, when you're a legend with 618 wickets at that stage, you'd probably say that's the ball that you'd bowl, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think Kohli's done anything wrong. Rahane, very disappointing. I know Varun would have been like seething after that run out, because he had a missed chance as well before that. And I mean, after that 3-4-5 being out, I was on the Cricinfo website, like scrolling for who the top most scorers in the Ranji trophies were.
Yeah.
Why haven't we got people who can bat in the middle order? These guys, every episode we're like, oh, no question about 3-4-5. But should there be questions about 3-4-5? Kohli hasn't scored runs for ages.
Are you questioning Virat Kohli's inclusion in the side?
I'm not, but I'm like,
I feel like you just did.
No, but I'm asking the question, like, we don't discuss it ever, because it's like 3 Pujara, 4 Kohli, 5 Rahane. senior, like Varun brought it up and we're like, no, bro, he's a vice captain. You can't question his spot. But if the batting lineup, which is your engine room, right, like 3, 4, 5, even at a club level, they need to score your runs. You
I mean,
can't tell me.
Rahane has scored the most recent century of the three of them, right?
Yeah,
Like
but that was in December.
Yeah, Pujara and Kohli go
We're in
much further back.
we're
They
in
go way
August.
further back than this. Let's be clear.
We're in August now.
Yeah. Whew, all
It's
right, let's
it
not get
hurts,
too
right?
far into selections, but yeah, I hear you. I mean, that's a problem. I will say on the flip side, almost. So, not much to talk on. So Rishabh Pant came in, struck it out at 25, hit a six
Just
and three
I
fours,
kept
just
walking out to Jimmy Anderson and smashing him.
unbelievable, right? But it works. It looks so good, and then when it does it, you're like, okay, you made 25 runs and got out in 20 balls, right? Like you're not playing responsible cricket. But I would have honestly said from 145 for 5 when Pant got dismissed, history and track record would have said, all right, 180, 190 max. All out. And this is where Ravindra Jadeja added a ton of value, made a 56, an excellent knock. Our tail did wag too. By the way, Shardul, who was in the side to bat at 8, made a duck. And still, Shami came out, looked okay for a bit, made 13. Bumrah came out, looked magnificent. Bumrah's batting average went from 2.1 to 3.5. That is a 66% increase in his batting average in one match. Just unbelievable. And the team did get to 278. So one thought there. We talked about it a little up front. To me, no question that Jadeja is your number 7. We've been saying he walks into all 3 formats. He does. I don't think Jadeja's beat Ashwin out for that spot because I don't think Ashwin can bat at 7 consistently. I think Ashwin is a magnificent number 8, but a little too weak batter for number 7. And so for me, Jadeja walked into that spot. But how critical was that, DJ, to go from 145 to 5 to getting to 278? That is huge based on what this tail has done in the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, absolutely brilliant. And Jadeja, until he sort of threw it away at the end, he batted really sensibly to start with as well. You could see that he was leaving a lot of balls outside the off stump, which is going to be against his nature because Indian players like to have the bat on ball. Again, what impressed me about Rahul was the number of balls they left and didn't play it. I think that would have imbibed a lot of confidence. That innings from Jadeja, that 56, I think he obviously justified that number 7 spot. The number 8 spot, Shardul Duck, but it goes back to 9, 10, 11, right? It goes back to those guys. Yes, in this innings, they scored some runs. But are you telling me that these guys are consistently going to come together to put on, what was it? It was 205 for 7, right?
Yeah.
And we went to 276.
73 runs for them last year.
Yeah.
Not happening.
I don't see it. I mean, England dropped a few catches. It was pretty shabby from England to let India get away that far. So, which is why that number 8 spot becomes so crucial. And it's, again, I don't want to get into selection, but I mean, they batted really well. They took their chances. Bumrah, magnificent. I think I've seen Bumrah hit a 6 live at the ground. I now can just die happily.
That's it. That's what you needed.
It was the greatest moment of the
Yeah.
day. I mean, Pant top at 1 for 6. I was like, you expect that from Pant. Bumrah hitting a 6. I think I was there for the moment of a lifetime.
So here's the thing, though. Bumrah looked better than he has looked before, right? So I don't know if I'm overthinking it. Has he invested? I talked to the Cricket Podcast guys about this. Has he invested in his batting because he realizes he wants to build a long test career, be doing this for a long time? If he can play a little bit more like a number 9 than an 11, that could add a ton of value. So did it look in the ground at least like Bumrah had invested in his batting, or was it a one-off 28 and we'll never see this from him again?
No, they have, and Kohli said that after the game as well. And Kohli is appreciated. Apparently they put a ton of work in at the nets. You saw Shami. Shami's got batting ability. He just doesn't think about his batting at all. He just wants to hit everything for 6. Yeah. I think he's got a test 50 as well, Shami. Siraj hit a straight drive of one of the quick bowlers. I mean, these guys are investing because they realize, like, and I was thinking about why our bowlers can't bat. And sometimes I wonder that because of the competition for spots, you've got to be so good at your primary skill that you don't have time to practice your secondary skill at all, which is like someone like a Bhuvi, right? Like, he's got batting talent, but he just hasn't justified it because he's probably trying to bowl that 5 kmph quicker, right? And maybe that's what hasn't allowed it to, and we've developed these bunnies at 9, 10, 11. But it's good to see they've had the time, they've put it in, and it's paid off in the first test. But we'll have to see whether this is a long-term return on their batting investment. But great to see the tail wag for a change and the other side's tail not wag for a change.
Yeah, this was very refreshing. Absolutely. So I think it's going to be interesting, right? We've now gone back-to-back series where Deepak Chahar won a match for us with his batting, and the tail wagged a little bit at least for Team India. And so maybe this is a sign of a little bit of a change of things, changing things to come. So let's hope so. A quick shout out to obviously Ollie Robinson, picked up a great 5 and Jimmy Anderson got 4. A little bit surprising, honestly, to me, after Jimmy got his 4th, that he got taken off the attack, that Karan came. So some questionable decisions from Joe Root for me as skipper. But if I was Jimmy, no matter how many 5ers he's taken, he's out there gunning for one more. So I was a little surprised he didn't push his captain to say, let me finish the tail off. But Robinson was able to pick up both Shami and Bumrah and got to his 5 instead. No wickets for Broad, none for Karan. So interesting selection questions for England as well, honestly. Like, do you Jofra Archer obviously can't play. Did they look at a Mark Wood or a different type of a bowler instead of a Karan? Or same question, right? Does Karan justify his place at number 8 for his batting? So both sides going through similar questions. Let's go to this second innings. It started to feel while the Indian tail was batting that the ball was swinging a little bit less. Conditions had gotten a little bit more favorable for the batsmen than they were in the first day and a half or so. England's openers looked a little better than they did in the first innings, but then they both fell in 2 wickets fell in pretty quick succession, with both Burns and Crawley going out. Siraj picked up 1, Bumrah picked up the next. And then Sibley stuck around for a little bit, but we have to give unquestionably this week's Siat Secure Drive Player of the Week award to Joe Root. 64 in the first innings, made a magnificent 109 in the second. I mean, the passion of a guy shows through, and after making 109 and steering your team to safety, he was still livid at himself when he got out. And DJ, Joe Root, England skipper, lots of questions. So many questions about management, coach, captaincy, made some questionable DRS decisions, etc. But with the bat, no question, right? So he had secured Drive Player of the Week.
I mean, I went to day 4 of the test match. England was 70 runs behind, no wickets down. But that could have easily, with 2 wickets down, still 40 odd runs behind, that could have easily been, I don't know, a chase of 120 for India at the end of the day. But Joe Root, man, I mean, we talk about the thrill of speed with complete control when we talk about the Siat Secure Drive tie, and Joe Root at one stage was 75 of 100 balls. He came out there. I can't remember a chance that he gave. I think there was one edge that fell short of Kohli at first slip. Oh my God, he just picked the bowlers apart with absolute precision. Just super, super. On what were challenging conditions, first test of a series, your team is behind the 8 ball. You've got bowlers with their tail up. You've got Bumrah, Siraj, Shami. Second innings, Shami didn't show up, unfortunately, but partly because Joe Root just absolutely tucked into him. And I mean, one of the best test match hundreds by Joe Root, one of the best test match hundreds I've watched at the ground, one of the best days of cricket I've watched at the ground, because the home team really supported him and you could see what it meant to him to get to that 100. His first 100 in 3 years at home. He scored 100 in the first test at Chennai, right? Hopefully the result of this series will be similar, but I mean, brilliant. And you can't dislike Joe Root. He's one of those players that you just like. He's got a kind of infectious enthusiasm for the game. He works hard. He's pretty to watch. And man, as an Indian supporter, you're like, it hurts your heart when he scores those many runs, but you can't grudge him the runs because it was a fantastic innings under pressure. Captain's knock, and he's pretty much their only batsman who did anything in this test match. So well done to him, and hopefully we can get him out quickly next time.
Yeah, really well said. We will talk a little bit more about the gentleman who eventually did get him out off of a fantastic delivery. But essentially, yeah, nobody really stuck around with him for too long. Sibley made 28, which is a whole different discussion about Sibley being what you have publicly called a poor man's Pujara. But he made more runs than Pujara this time. So there's something to be said for that. But 28 of 133 balls. Bairstow looked good for a little bit before getting out. Actually, he looked scratchy initially. Then he looked good for a bit. Then he got out on 30. Lawrence made 25. Karan made 32 again. But really, this was the Joe Root show. So they got to 303. We are going to take a quick Siatar strategic timeout, talk a little bit about India's bowling, and then wrap up what was unfortunately a test that just got cut short thanks to the rain, and talk a little bit about the next test coming up when we come back. So stay tuned after the Sia Tire strategic timeout. Welcome back to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, brought to you by Sia Tires. DJ, we've given out our first award of the week, which was to Joe Root. One more to give out, and that is to a man who has been, we've talked a little bit about, picked up a great 4 in the first innings, but in that second innings, picked up 5. I don't know what it is. It's like the difference for a batsman between making 90 and 100 runs, right? The difference between 4 and 5. Just that 5 for is a special moment for a bowler. And of course, we're talking about Jasprit Bumrah. But let me run through. 3 of his 5 were Dom Sibley, who had faced over 100 balls, Zach Crawley, who bats at number 3, and Joe Root, who was on 109, right? And then and of course, Sam Curran, who was batting really good as well. And he cleaned up Broad exactly as you said in the first innings. He just aimed at the stumps and at his toes and got that wicket. So magnificent 5 for Jasprit Bumrah. How important is his kind of return to this team? And like you said, he leads the bowling attack. And talk us through why he's the puncture resistant player of this week.
Yeah, I think he was called a choker. He was called a big match, a non-performer. There were questions around whether marriage had affected his concentration or whatever the hell that means. But I mean, he's answered every question there, right? I mean, you could see what it meant to him. You could see what it meant to Kohli. You did when he got his fifer, when he got his 5th one, bold, Broad. You could see Kohli goes up with the 5, and I mean, he is the leader of the Indian attack. He's a quiet guy. He doesn't show much emotion on the field, but you could see that it meant a lot to him, and he's bounced back. And it's really important for him to pick up those 5 wickets in the first match of this Test series. I think an honorable mention should go to KL Rahul, because he's had a pretty tough time in Test arena as well, for bouncing back and scoring 110 runs across 2 innings. Unfortunately, out in the second inning, so he can get a red inker and keep his average up. But also, I mean, you talked about stats earlier. Does anyone know the stats on KL Rahul in short sleeves? I've had a huge theory about
I
this.
saw you tweet
For
that out.
years.
Hopefully somebody will do this. Short
Please,
sleeve versus long
somebody
sleeves.
do these stats. I mean, I've had a theory that KL Rahul, when he bats in long sleeves, never makes runs. So we need the stats of KL Rahul in short sleeves versus KL Rahul in long sleeves. I mean, he's such a great IPL player because he plays in short sleeves. Great ODI player, mostly plays in short sleeves. So I have a theory. It's like the headband versus no headband, Umesh, Stuart Broad type of stat. Someone please do these stats. It would make me immensely happy.
This is absolutely the important stuff we're focused on here at the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. But actually, that's true. We've done this for a lot of players. But let's talk a little bit about the final kind of session where we actually got some play. And of course, I'm talking about after England made 303, India came out to bat. Rahul looked pretty good, got a few nice boundaries, looked pretty solid. And then Stuart Broad bowled a great delivery, right on length, drew the edge out from Rahul. Yeah, some people said he probably didn't need. If he was going to push, he needed to push harder at it. If he was going to leave it, he could leave it. But it was a peach of a delivery, so no discredit there.
And you have a microsecond to decide that.
Yeah,
Man. I mean,
of course,
people are just like sitting on Twitter going, "Oh, I've got a 260 characters or whatever to write stuff." So
it's easy to criticize, but Rohit Sharma again showed a ton of grit, just absolutely magnificent, right? Ended up 12 of 34 balls, but if you had to watch it to realize how important those 12 runs were. And Pujara as well. Pujara actually hit the last ball of the day for a boundary, which was so uncharacteristic.
I mean, so
we
were sat there in the last hour, just you couldn't bear to watch. I think I was like watching it with my hoodie around my head, because it was so tense. Like, you're chasing 200. Broad and Anderson, overcast skies, floodlights on, and Rahul goes, and then of course Rohit pulls one in the last over, and you're just like, why do you hit that shot? He can't duck, he can't sway, he has to hit it. Luckily,
he
this
hit it
time he
into
hit
the
it down.
ground. He did a good job
hit
hitting
it down,
into the
right?
ground. Yeah.
And so you're living every moment, and then Ollie Robinson bowls this. Pujara edges one, it goes at a catchable height through the cordon, it goes for 4. And then it's called a no ball, and you're like, no, please, not another delivery.
I don't want
where
one more
get
delivery.
Away.
Yeah.
Please. And then this guy on the last ball of the day, with everything hanging in the balance, Robinson throws it wise, and Pujara cracks it for 4. And that just made the best day of Test cricket I've ever watched. It was just, I mean, you just felt so tense, and it was just a release of tension. It was just great. I mean, Yeah, incredible. That four
Unbelievable.
just made my day completely.
Yeah, unbelievable, right? Really, really well said. And this is why it's so painful. The rain in England is so painful because walking in at the end of day 4, 157 runs to get for India to win, 9 wickets to get for England to win, 98 overs minus rain. They were projecting you to lose maybe like a half to a third to a half of the day's rain. So could have been 50 to 60 overs or so. Honestly, I want to lead in here on the commentators cliche, but we were poised to have potentially all 4 results possible. India could have chased down 2.5, 3 runs and over. England could have picked up 9 wickets if they had 50 plus 50 to 60 overs. It could have come down to nearly getting to a tie type of a finish based on time, and of course a draw. And unfortunately, we got 0 play on day 5. It was rained out. Very disappointing. DJ, let's talk about going into Lords a little bit, right? We can talk all day about England and how painful the rain is, etc. But let's talk about going into Lords. Does India change anything from a team standpoint? Kohli said at the post-match presentation he felt pretty happy with the template. Gave probably a few too many runs away in that second innings, but overall felt good. Like it was a good spot. Actually, before we talk selection, let me ask you: let's say we got 60 overs of play on day 5. What do you think? What would your prediction have been?
I was actually going for an India win.
Yeah.
I think I've only watched India win 2 Test matches in England in the 14 years I've been here, and it felt like we dominated that. England fought back well in the second innings, make no mistake. But every time they threatened to get enough runs, we picked up a wicket.
Yeah.
And then that 52 for 1, right? You're backing this lineup to get 157. It's not a last day pitch. It's not spinning. It wasn't seeming massively. But I think if Rohit, who batted magnificently, and Pujara could have got through, or even with a couple of wickets down, right? The shorter the period of the game, I think the more chances India had to win. So I would have backed India to even win this with about a session and a half.
Yeah, it's interesting. I probably
40
would have
overs
gone,
or so,
yeah.
I think we would have got it.
Yeah, I probably would have gone the same as you, but I honestly think it's in England, 150 run, getting 9 wickets for 150 is not out of the question. So it could have gone either way. So it would have been, it was tantalizingly poised, and unfortunately we missed out. So can you
This is
tell
why
I'm a little
saying
bitter at the rain?
Yeah, but we needed 2 hours more, right? And I find it amazing that they just didn't start half an hour earlier from day 3 onwards. Every morning was dry. And that's an hour and a half play more. It's just absolutely absurd to be not being flexible enough. And I think the reason was that people couldn't get their trains up from London or
That's
something.
what these guys were saying, that for the
Yes.
trains to make it to from London with off-peak rates, you have to allow for an 11 start. But that's insane, right? That's just absurd. The whole world is watching this. It's a World Test Championship kickoff. It's just so much at stake. And
surely the trains earlier are more off-peak. I don't know.
This is your country. I don't know about this. I was just going off what people said.
I think Nasir Hussain tweeted about this. And why aren't we starting at 10:30 or even 10? Make up the time you've lost. Let us watch Test cricket between these two teams.
I agree. But we missed out. It didn't happen. So we prepare ourselves for an August 12th match at Lords, just 5 days away. Kohli and Root will both be thinking through, kind of the opportunity areas. Both sides did well, but both sides left a lot to be desired. So from an India standpoint, DJ, going into this second test, do you change anything? Do you consider rotating the quicks to give them some rest? They didn't bowl that much at the end of it. Do you bring in a Ravi Ashwin? Do you slot out Rahul? Do you think about 3, 4, 5? What do you do if you're chief selector going into the Lords match?
So I don't think we can change the batting yet because we haven't had, Pujara Pujara's only batted a little bit. He batted he batted once.
Yeah.
Rahane's only batted one, but they will come under pressure if they fail. And I think the pressure will come from Vihari in Rahane's case and from Mayank, I think, potentially in Pujara's case if the runs don't come. Kohli, of course, undroppable. Just hope he scores 100 next week at Lords. It would be magnificent.
He is so due.
It would be magnificent. I mean, he's due, and I hope he pops soon. But bowling wise, I don't think you can play Siraj and Shami in the same side.
Okay.
I don't think you can. I think Siraj I like Siraj a lot, but I don't think he brings enough control or in terms of moving the ball both ways, variety. He bowls at the stumps. He bowls straight. He bowls only one way, which is into the right hander. Shami moves the ball both ways, has more experience. Shami was off. Let's also talk about Shami. He didn't bowl particularly well in the second innings, which we expect him to show up in, but fine, whatever. I don't think you can play Shami and Siraj in the same side. I think Ishant brings you that control. When the runs are flowing, Ishant brings you that control with that experience. If he's fit for Lords, I would replace Siraj with Ishant. Just simply because he's that workhorse. He's bowled in these conditions before. He has a 7 for at Lords. He's got good memories on the honors board. Bring in Ishant, and I think Shami, Ishant, Bumrah. That's my three. And we play Shardul because, frankly, I think this Test match, Shardul done enough with the ball. He didn't let the pressure off. He was probably our best bowler in that second innings, other than Bumrah, who picked up all the wickets. He was second best in that innings. He sort of kept it together. So he didn't do enough with the bat. So we'll keep an eye on that. But I think the one change for me is Ishant for Siraj if he's fit.
Not a bad shout. I agree with you. I think Ishant comes in at Lords. I think the question is it'll be either Siraj or Shardul, because there were patches where Siraj looked great and they're going to watch what happens in the net. They're going to be looking for conditions, etc. But Siraj did look really good at points. Remember, he did pick up both Rory and Bairstow, I think it was, in that second innings, right? So there were points where he was effective, but so was Shardul.
Wicket was controversial. I think Bairstow just nailed it straight to Jadeja.
But there was a plan, right? Jadeja didn't move an inch. Like it's like the Rohit wicket in the first inning. Jadeja did not move an inch for that shot. Like that was a simple line. So,
but I think he said 4-1 already, Kohli. If all stays well, he said 4-1 in the post match presser. He said he likes the combo, right? So
he likes that.
Maybe he's a double bluff. Maybe it's a double bluff, and
we'll see. That brings us to pretty much a wrap. DJ, before we let the listeners go, can you quickly remind them of this month's #BatWithSiad contest? Do you have it handy?
Yes, I can. I have to just refresh my memory for a second. But yes, active Indian cricketer that holds the Indian Test record for the maximum number of sixes in an innings. He holds it jointly with Navjot Singh Sidhu. The number of sixes is 8. Tell us who the active Indian cricketer is who holds that record. It's not the world record. It's not the inning. It's not the record across a Test match. It's a single innings maximum number of sixes hit by an Indian cricketer. It's an active cricketer and he holds it jointly with Navjot Singh Sidhu. Write into us on Twitter with the #BatWithSiad.
Perfect. We've already got a few winners from the last few months we've been running this, so you might be the next one. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, brought to you by Siad Tires. I've been your host, Ashwin. We will be back next week, probably midway through or the Lord's Test, so that should be fun. Definitely lots of exciting cricket to come. If anybody knows any sort of chants or dances or anything to keep the rain away from England during the next week's Test match, please invest in those. But otherwise, as always, you can find us on all social media at One Tip One Hand, or listen to Edges and Sledges wherever you get podcasts. And we're putting most of these on YouTube now, so be sure to like and subscribe those. Thank you, everybody. Have an awesome rest of the week, and we will see you after the Lord's match.
Stay safe, stay home, and stay dry.